Ladies and gentlemen, today is probably the most requested video I've had in a really long time. And if you can't read the title or you can't read the thumbnail, what this video is the top 5 loadouts currently in Warzone. And you may be wondering why it's been so requested, and it's because after the Season 3 update, the meta has entirely shifted. All of the weapons that were the best in the game, for example, like the AUG or the FFAR, have been nerfed, and other weapons have been buffed. And because of that, this is probably the best meta that we've seen in a really long time in Warzone, because there's a ton of different weapons that you can actually use and compete at a high level. In this video, I'm going to be showing you, I guess technically 12 different weapons with different attachments that are currently the best in the game, but that's not even all of them that are currently the best. There's weapons like the M16 and the LC10 that are top tier that I don't even cover in this video, so it's insane the amount of weapons that are competitive. Now, what I am going to do is actually start off with my favorite class setup and move down to my least favorite, but all of these, every single weapon that we look at is good in its own right. In each weapon that we look at, I'm going to tell you whether this weapon is good at long or close range and why I use the two weapons in conjunction, just to kind of give you an idea how to build your dream loadout, because really any of these weapons that we look at today, you can take and put into their own class setup. They don't have to be the exact two weapons that I use in the loadouts, and you'll see what I mean as I dive into this. So normally at the beginning of every single season, I also give you a class setup with the new weapons, which in this case is the PPSH and the new sniper rifle, but these are just not some of the meta weapons. So what I'm going to do is, if you want to use these weapons, I'm going to throw two class setups on screen right now so you can know exactly what attachments to throw on them if you want to use them. But just know they are not currently the best weapons in the game. That's why I'm not throwing them in the loadout. So if you want to use these, just pause the screen, throw these attachments on. I promise you they're the best ones. But the reason why I'm not going over them is they're just not the best weapons in the game. But speaking of the best weapons in the game, let's just dive right into my favorite class setup. We're going to go from my favorite class setup to my least favorite, but all of these are absolutely 100% usable. Starting off with my personal favorite class. So this is the one that I use the most if I'm going for a good game. This is it. Now, first I want to talk about the perks, and then we'll dive into the actual weapons. I'm only going to talk about the perks and lethal and tactical once. So as far as my perks go, I use EOD, Overkill, and Amped. If I'm playing on a game and I don't feel like there's going to be a lot of explosives, I might use double time, but most of the time I use EOD. Overkill I use on my first class, and then when I pick up my second class, I either use Ghost or Restock, depending on how I want to play. If I'm playing aggressive, Restock. If you want to camp, you use Ghost. And then finally, you have Amped. Basically, always use Amped. After this, as far as your lethal goes, basically I either use a Semtex or a Thermite. You're going to see that on either of my classes. And then as a tactical, I use a heartbeat sensor, but most of my team uses flashbangs. I'm just the person on my team with a heartbeat. If we get in a sticky situation, I can pull that out and tell some people where some people are. After this, moving into the actual weapon. So this is where things get interesting. I'm using the CR56 AMAX, which is essentially, in my opinion, as of right now, the best rifle in the game. It does have a little bit of recoil, but once you get used to that recoil and can control it, this thing absolutely shreds. In my opinion, this recoil is low enough where you can just completely melt people. It has great damage, amazing range, and is best in class. My guess is this gun will probably get nerfed in the next 2 weeks. Now, as far as what I'm using on this, basically monolithic suppressor, just like you use on any of your Modern Warfare rifles. After this, the Zodiac barrel. This one improves your damage range, bullet velocity, and your recoil control on top of that, which is nice. I also use the Commando foregrip for recoil stabilization. This isn't necessarily necessary, but I find that it helps, especially if you're trying to shoot people out of the air who are dropping in. This is where this comes into play. After this, I use 45 round mags, and then the VLK 3x optic, which is of course for those long range gunfights, which this weapon is very good at. And on top of that, it also helps reduce a little bit of recoil as well. Now, the second weapon that I'm using here is the MAC-10. Now, this one technically got nerfed going into Season 3, but the reason why I'm using this weapon is because with this specific class setup, the mobility with it is absolutely unbelievable, best in class, and I recommend trying out this specific loadout with this weapon because you just move around so fast. So normally on most of my SMGs, I use the agency suppressor or the GRU suppressor, depending on which weapon you're using on all the Cold War weapons, but on this one I am not, because this class is specifically made for movement. So I use the Task Force barrel just for the extra damage range and strafe speed, but I also use the Tiger Team Spotlight, aka the flashlight, for movement speed and aim walking move speed. So again, just to move very quickly. quickly. On top of this, the Raider stock for ADS fire move speed. On top of this, sprint to fire time and aim walking move speed. So again, just moving faster and faster. I do use the 53 round drum mag. I use this because I mostly play team games. So generally when you get in a gunfight, you're in a gunfight with more than one person. And finally, the striker grip once again for move speed. I'm telling you, put these attachments on, try this weapon out, and you're going to be blown away by how fast you run around, how fast you move while shooting, and everything in between. Trust me, try this out. It is awesome. Now, I think on paper, the time to kill of this isn't necessarily the best, but it's close enough, and with the move speed, you're gonna love it. Moving on to our second class here. So in the previous class, we had our CR56 AMAX for our long range, and then we had our SMG, the MAC-10, for our short range. This one is a little bit different because we are using an assault rifle and a sniper rifle. The Pharah 83 is my new favorite weapon within Season 3. It has incredibly low recoil, a great fire rate, great handling, and because of the update, because of the Season 3 update, it has that really low recoil and is very manageable. So with this class, I'm essentially using my Pharah as a short and mid-range weapon, and because it's good at mid-range, I can just use a sniper for those long range. So as far as my Pharah goes, the attachments that I use are the GRU suppressor, like we talked about before, the RPK barrel, which is for damage range, bullet velocity, and strafe speed. On top of this, I'm using the 55 round fast mag. Technically, it does give you a little bit longer of an aim down sights time, and because I'm using this as a short range weapon, you could just use the normal 50 round mags, but personally, I prefer the fast mags just in my situation. I also use the Serpent Wrap. This one is to improve that aim down sights time. And finally, the Skeletal Stock. This is for the ADS move speed and the sprint to fire time. This is my new favorite weapon within Season 3. It definitely feels the most different from what we were using before. It has a great TTK up close. It has a great TTK at mid-range. And then for the long-range gunfights, we use a weapon that I've been using for literally months and months and months, which is the Kar 98, the same class setup that we have used before. Monolithic suppressor, 27.6-inch barrel, tac laser for that faster ADS, variable zoom scope. It's just what I prefer. If you like the normal scope, you can use that. And then the Stippy Grippy just for that ADS and sprint to fire speed once again. This is the best sniper in the game. As long as you're hitting headshots, this is the sniper that you want to use. But oddly, it is not my favorite sniper rifle, even though I'm saying it's the best. That is where my third favorite class setup comes in. So this is probably the weirdest one that you're going to see today. It is the AK-47 and the LW3 Tundra. So the AK-47 is probably my biggest surprise within Season 3. This weapon is awesome up close and kind of at mid-range. It has a little bit more recoil than the Pharah. That's why I prefer the Pharah. However, it does deal a lot of damage, packs a punch, and up close, it is really, really good with a great time to kill. Now, at long range is where it really runs into trouble because of that extra recoil, and that is why I'm using it with a sniper rifle. Now, as far as the attachments on my AK-47, once again, we're rocking that GRU suppressor and the RPK barrel. Once again, for bullet velocity, strafe speed, and the damage range. I'm also once again using the skeletal stock. You're going to notice that a lot of the Cold War weapons use the same attachments, similarly how the Modern Warfare weapons use the same attachments. Again, this one's for the ADS fire move speed and the sprint to fire time. I'm also using the 45 round speed mag. Essentially, with the 60 round fast mag, the ADS is just too slow, and because I'm using it as an up close weapon, it is my short range weapon, I want that little bit faster of ADS time. And then I'm also using the Spetsnaz grip for recoil, because as we talked about, there is a good amount of recoil on this weapon, and I do want this to excel at medium range. Now, the underdog weapon, the LW3 Tundra. I had this on my Season 2 weapons as well. Do not sleep on the LW3 Tundra. Basically, what you need to know about the Tundra is this thing has incredibly good bullet velocity. So even if someone is really far away from you, you just point your reticle at their head, pull the trigger, and it's most likely going to hit them in the head unless they are very far away, because it has such high bullet velocity. It is a very, very easy sniper rifle to use. The downside is it doesn't quite have the fire rate of the Kar 98 or the mobility of the Kar 98. So technically on paper, it's a little bit worse, but in practice, this is my favorite sniper rifle, and you can pull off some absolutely amazing shots with this one. And if you haven't tried it out, I really recommend it, and my advice to you, point at the head, pull the trigger. Now, as far as the attachments on this one, we have the wrap suppressor, of course, to stay off the radar. It also improves some other things as well, but mainly to stay off the radar. The combat recon to improve that bullet velocity. Again, that is the best part of the sniper. You want to make it as good as possible. reticle. I am using the 4x optic. As far as the gameplay that you saw, I was kind of using the wrong reticle. I would definitely recommend either the recon or the precision reticle, not the default, but that's what I was using in the gameplay. It's not terrible, but it's just not great. We also have the bruiser grip. As you're seeing here, it improves the movement speed and aiming stability, so that helps with those longer range snipes. And finally, the serpent wrap to help you with that ADS time if you really need to hit some quick scopes. Like I said, do not sleep on this weapon. It's definitely worth a shot. Try it out. Now, moving into some later class setups, this is where we're going to look at some of the different SMGs that you should be using. So first of all, this class is the Krig 6, which got a big buff in Season 3, and the MP5 from Black Ops Cold War, not from Modern Warfare. The reason being, in this class setup, I'm using the Krig for mid and long range. At long range, it does have a little bit of recoil. So the Krig is kind of a weird weapon because it hits really, really hard, but it does have a lot of recoil. In fact, it probably has the highest recoil of any of the weapons that I'm going to talk about here. So we're going to kind of make a class to kind of play into that, but it hits really hard. So you don't have to hit as many bullets, and especially if you're hitting headshots, but at the same time, it does have recoil. So I will say it takes a little bit more skill to use this weapon. Our second weapon, the MP5 from Black Ops Cold War. This thing is a beast up close, an amazing time to kill, and I don't know why more people are not using it. It is true that at the mid or longer range, it has a little bit more recoil. It's kind of a little bit more difficult to use, but up close, you're going to shred with this weapon. So starting off with the MP5, we have the agency suppressor. So basically to stay off the radar, and on top of that, it helps with some recoil and improves your effective damage range. On top of this, we have the Tiger Team Spotlight once again for that move speed. This is our short range weapon. We want to be moving fast with it, hence why we have the flashlight on there. Similarly with the Raider stock, for a very similar reason, you're going to see a lot of the time on my SMGs I either use no stock or Raider stock. This one we are using the 50 round drum mag, not the fast mag, because it makes your ADS worse and we don't want that. So make sure you're using the just round drum, not the fast mag. And then finally, the field agent grip. This is for recoil. This is weird because on the MP5 for Modern Warfare, I wouldn't use recoil stability, but on this one, I think it does need it. After this, we have the Krig. Now, this one's a little bit weird because, like I said, it's got a lot of recoil. Once again, using the agency suppressor, going to help your bullet velocity, going to help your recoil. On top of that, help you stay off the radar. We're going to use the Ranger just because it improves your bullet velocity and has very little cons, so you don't really have to worry about it making your weapon worse. After this, we are going to be using the 60 round fast mags because this is our long range weapon. We don't have to worry about that ADS as much. The scope that you're going to want to use is the axial arms 3x. And as far as this weapon goes, when you are choosing a reticle, I actually recommend the clean living. Most of the time I do not, because as you can see here, it looks very tiny. Most of the time when you use it on a weapon, it gets larger, but on this weapon, it really does not. So literally only on the Krig, use the clean living. That's the best advice I can give for that one. And then finally, the last attachment is once again, the Raider stock for those movement bonuses. So as far as this class goes, it's not the best class in the game, but both of these are weapons that you can use at any time. You don't have to use them together. You can throw on the MP5 with your AMAX. You can throw on the Krig with a different SMG or a sniper, or really whatever you want. They're both just solid weapons. And the last class, definitely the weirdest one, we have an SMG and an LMG. So first off, the Bullfrog. This is a weapon that I think a lot of people are going to be sleeping on, but it is really good. It has really good range for an SMG, very low recoil, good fire rate, great TTK. Definitely give this one a shot. I do prefer the other SMGs that we talked about, the MAC-10 and the MP5, but this one is also good and definitely very viable. As far as the attachments I'm using on it, the GRU suppressor, as we've talked about before, the Task Force barrel. This is probably the barrel that you're going to use on most of your SMGs for strafe speed, for bullet velocity, and for damage range. Again, using the Tiger Team Spotlight for that movement speed. It's a great attachment. If you haven't tried it out, use it. As far as your stock, you can either use the no stock or the Raider stock. I still think I prefer the no stock, but that's just my opinion. And then finally, we have the Serpent wrap for the rear grip. After this, we have the Stoner. Now, this is an interesting one. This one hits like a ton of bricks, but it's another one of those weapons that does have a little bit more recoil and weird recoil. It takes a little bit to get used to this recoil. So if you're going to use this weapon, you're going to have to play a few games to kind of get used to how it hits, how much recoil it has, but it does hit really hard once you're used to it. As far as what we're using, once again, agency suppressor and task force barrel. After this, I use the 2x scope on it. You can use the 3x, but I find the 3x just has a little bit too much recoil, hence why I use the 2x. The Raider pad, which is just your Raider stock for movement speed. And And then finally, the Field Agent Grip, this one once again for recoil. So again, these are all of the weapons that I am using. Right now, there are other weapons that are not on this list that you can use. The M16, the LC10. There's a ton of really good weapons, and if there was ever a time to just go in and try a bunch of different weapons and see what you like, it is right now. The best of the best as of right now, I believe, is the CR56 AMAX. So if you're really going for high kills, that's probably going to be the weapon you use. But I'm guessing 2-3 weeks from now, maybe the mid-season update, that AMAX is going to get a nerf, and then all of these weapons are pretty much going to be equally viable, and there's going to be a new competition for the best weapon in the game. But yeah, definitely try a bunch of weapons out right now. That is my best advice, because you are going to find something that you like, and I guarantee you one person watching this video is going to like a different weapon. One may like the Bullfrog, one may like the MP5, another person's gonna like the Pharah. So those are my opinions. Those are the attachments that I use. Let me know what you're using down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. New to the channel, hit subscribe, all of that good jazz. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.
We are reaching for the stars.